Prowess with Raphael and Dr. Andrea. Our show will bring you the best insights, ideas, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs and CEOs in the business world. Don't miss out on the opportunity to learn from the best and stay ahead of the game. Sifu Raphael is the founder of 5 Unique Shows. He's a fitness professional, solutions expert, executive coach, and head instructor at Max Martial Arts and Fitness in New York. Dr. Andrea Adams-Miller is an award-winning international keynote speaker, best-selling author, and CEO of the Red Carpet Connection Publicity, Publishing, and Talent Agency, and CEO of IgniteYourRelationship.com. Known as the Dream Maker, she makes visionaries' dreams come true, bigger than they ever dared to desire.
Dr. Andrea, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Well, of course.
Love it when we have this incredible show, and we have a great guest coming on. Why don't we go ahead and bring him on?
Yeah.
Taylor, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you, my friend?
I'm excellent. How are you? It's good to be here.
Excellent, excellent. So today's topic is the power of business, and I think that we're all super excited about it because this is, after all, is business prowess, right? And when we consider the power of business, how can we really see the power of business if we work for someone else and we're always thinking that they're taking advantage of us?
It's a good question. Yeah, I think about business through a few different lenses, but when I think about the power of business, or more specifically when I talk about that, what I'm really thinking about and talking about is that the power of business to be a really positive driver in people's lives. You know, we think about business, and we certainly talk about business through the lens of, you know, profitability and ROI and, you know, metrics, and those are great things. Businesses should be those things. They should be profitable. But I think we forget about the human aspect. You know, we forget about what businesses can be, what jobs, you know, what putting people in the right places in businesses can mean for those people involved in it. And I think really at its core, that's where I think about business, and where I'm most excited about it is what it can do for people. And I think it can be just such a powerful component of people's lives when it's done well, or when it's done with a sensitivity that allows us to think about it in a more nuanced way outside of some of these more classic, you know, metrics based aspects. So that's really when I think about that, when I use that language, I'm thinking about the people involved in the business and what it can really mean in terms of kind of empowerment for those people's lives.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Dr. Andrea, so it is Friday, right? So many people shut down Friday afternoon, or they stop having business after 3:00 because everybody's like ready to go to happy hour. Is that the right way to run business?
Well, you know, it was funny you said that, and I don't know if you guys saw my eyes. I was like, what? And I was like thinking around. I'm like, it's okay. First of all, you said it's Friday, and I had to think, okay, how is that different from any other day in my life? Wait. Close down, be done. What? You know, so I'm an entrepreneur. I own multiple businesses. The idea of stopping and slowing down isn't even on my plate. Now, I'm not saying that people shouldn't self-care and have fun times and do other things, but usually on the weekends, you know, I do theater as well. So I might be in a show, or I'm going, like tomorrow, I'm traveling to an event tonight to get to a conference tomorrow. So I have a lot going on the weekend. So I don't think of it as a wind down, but going back in my life where, you know, that aspect was, you know, it's to me, it's sad because like Friday afternoon at the end of the day, there's such an ability to really empower your employees and your work staff and yourself to be really excited about ending your week on a really positive note. So I would love for people to set that it's not the end. This is the beginning of getting prepared so that when you come back in on Monday, you're actually excited about coming in because you know what new things you get to do rather than you have to come to work. You get to come to work.
Love it. Love it.
Yeah.
I was at a job when I was young, and every Friday we'd have a party. I think we lost you for a quick second. I'll put you back up. We had a, well,
I'm removing me for a reason.
okay, go ahead. So we used to have a party like every Friday. It was everybody went to lunch, and afterwards people did things that they had to do, but then we had a party. And it wasn't like, okay, it's time, you can go home. It was more like, let's celebrate what accomplishments happened that week. And it was, we had hors d'oeuvres, we had things, we had a chef on board, and he would cook special things for, so everybody was excited about what happened that week. And it allows us to also, we used to talk about what's going to happen next week. So I agree with you. It shouldn't be a wind down. It should be a wind up. As
I
to
worked
how
I
we
worked
can
for
move forward.
a company that on Friday afternoons, it was a hazardous waste company. And on Friday afternoons, the executive staff opened up the bar. So we had their own bar. I worked private security then. I was 19 years old before I worked in law enforcement. And think about that. That's so funny. Everybody was happy to stay at work and then stay together and congregate and then drink and then go home. So
Mm.
nowadays, that would definitely be frowned upon.
I
Especially
think there's an
drinking.
opportunity too to kind of shift that narrative. I always think about just less about the day of the week, like to your point, Andrea, and more about just like, am I engaged in what I want to be engaged in? Like
Yeah.
a Friday is no different than a Sunday, is no different than a Monday if I'm doing things that I want to be doing. And I think about I've always been a proponent of identifying what I call my non-negotiables, which are, what are the things that I am showing up for every day. That's going to be, I want to do great work. I want to do great work with great people. I want to take care of my physical fitness. I want to make sure I have time for my family. There's like 3 or 4 things, that I want to make sure. And as long as those are a part of every day, I don't need some massive break. Again, like you were saying, I'm not advocating to work all the time or not to have those intentional moments, but I just think there's so much of an opportunity to, instead of like working for the weekend, right, is to just, are you doing the things you want to do? Right. And for me, if I wake up and I go to work on a Sunday versus a Tuesday, it's the same thing, right? It's an opportunity to be engaged. It's a chance to do things I want to do. And those days might look or feel different based on, what I have going on or what I need to prioritize. But I mean, I think we just put so much pressure on ourselves to make these particular days feel a certain way. And I'm like, are you doing the things you want to be doing? Then just, who cares if it's a Saturday or a Wednesday? And I think that's maybe partly, certainly, probably a uniquely like entrepreneurial mindset where you do have some of these kind of parameters. We get the opportunity to have more flexibility and to build our schedules in a way that is more dynamic. But I've seen that play out in really positive ways in more employee-based spaces as well, where people don't necessarily have that autonomy, but you can still, you're not just trying to kill time till you get to Friday, like we were saying, Friday at 1:00, your brain shuts down and you don't put anything else out. I think we can be a lot more engaged when we think about things through a slightly different lens.
Taylor, I love the fact that you talked about the power of business. It's truly about the power of impact that you can make with business on the people around you and maybe your community, even the world. It depends on the type of business, but a lot of it could be local. How are you impacting your community? How are you impacting your neighbors? If you work in a facility and you have businesses next door to you, how are they impacting you? So I think there is a power in how we run our business, because I have neighbors on either side of my businesses, and how they run their businesses kind of impacts me, because their traffic, my traffic, they can benefit from the business that I generate, because my customers will go and solicit their business. So I think it is definitely a touch upon how a business can impact our community locally.
Mm-hmm. I think we forget about, certainly post pandemic, we forget about the power of just that connection piece in the real world, right? That we used to just move through a community, and we used to go to lunch with people, and we used, and those things are certainly, I think we're, getting back into the habit of those, or at least I can speak for myself. But yeah, to your point, I think, what has always worked in our businesses is still not broken, right? Meaning it's good to get FaceTime with people, right? Have a coffee, meet them at their office, walk next door, check in on them. How are you doing things? What works? What doesn't? And it is great to be able to connect with people no matter where they're at. But I think, again, this is a reminder as much to myself. This is something I've been trying to work on, kind of re-implementing and re-engaging in the last couple of years. It's like, no, get on a plane, take the meeting, go get some FaceTime. Can I do it over Zoom? Absolutely. Am I gonna get more out of it in terms of just what that does for me and that impact, right? There's just so much more energy that I think we've kind of sometimes forgotten about. And, I run predominantly remotely, based businesses. I believe in the power of connection outside of that, and how we leverage technology. But as business owners, I think it's a good reminder to just, like you said, to make sure that we're connecting with our community first, the people in our circles, and then it can branch out from there. But lest we forget about the people next door, and the impact that they can have on us and we can have on them.
Absolutely. Dr. Andrea, you said you're going to an event tomorrow, and you're going to an event not because, don't get me wrong, I'm sure it's going to be a great event, but you're also conducting business everywhere you go because you're very outgoing, you're very people oriented. So how are you going to bring the power of your businesses? You have 3 different businesses and also a charity event that you run.
Mm-hmm.
How are you going to use the power of your businesses when you meet new people, when you network? So tell us how someone listening to us can say, I want to do what Dr. Andrea is doing because it makes a lot of sense. So would you share with us?
Sure. Yeah. It builds on top of what Taylor was saying about, reconnecting with people. So connection is really important to me. And I consider every one of my connections collateral. So it's collateral to something, to someone, possibly for finances, for emotional support, for friendship, for catharticism, where like if I do something for them, I feel good, altruism, that's probably more altruistic what I just said. But that ability to have all of those kinds of emotions. So for me, going to an event, the moment I walk in a door, I'm not even there. And the second I walk out, step up and put clothes on, since I wear red every day of my life, I live my brand. So I call it living red. So red stands for relevance, enthusiasm, and delivery. And so, or determination, depends on what day it is or what thing. And the whole idea of wearing red is, so I'm very recognizable. I've been wearing red every day of my life since 2013. So people, it is very clear when I am in the room that Andrea showed up. So, and even though I'm big in size, it's not my size that makes me show up. It's that I'm big in energy. I could be saying nothing. Actually, let me give an example of this. I had a business partner who wanted me at a certain event, and he wanted me to, he asked me specifically to wear black. And he said, you show up too big, too bright. I need you to diminish, since this is my event and I'm in charge of it and you're going with me, you need to wear black. So I found a dress that I used to wear 20 years ago and wore it. And when the event was over, he said, okay, I guess you're right. And I'm like, right about what? And he said, it doesn't matter what color you wear. You show up anyways.
Love it.
However, when I show up red, that's my brand. So that's my way of connecting with people. And then I am funny and engaging. Well, at least that's what people tell me. So that's what I choose to believe. So So I do create conversations with people, and then I want to hear what they have to say. So if I tell a story, I'll say, did something like that happen to you? I want to hear it. And I love it when I'm like, yeah, I love that, encouraging and people overlapping the conversation, so that I can hear more about them. And then I take mental notes of what people are saying. So then that way later on, I can refer back to something that was important to them or that they addressed. So one of the things, Taylor, that I would love to hear more about with you is the whole idea of the power of business related to endurance. Given that that's something that you've talked about.
Yeah, I think, I mean, just to kind of use that language, as you guys certainly are well aware, building businesses requires a tremendous amount of endurance, right? I always kind of think of the adage, I guess, or just kind of the scenario that I think really the people that are successful oftentimes are just the people that are willing to stick it out longer than others. There's so many bumps in the road and friction, and it always takes longer than we thought. Even when it goes really well, right? It still probably is harder than we thought it was going to be, and it probably takes longer, and we have to invest more, and we have to, right, the list goes on. And so I think just that component, I think, has always been a very clear line to me, and a common thread with endurance. And then specifically with, kind of how we think endurance as it relates to like our bodies and our physical fitness. I've found so much, one of the capacities that I've worked in for a long time is in the coaching space in kind of the health and wellness industry. So I own another business that helps coaches build and scale their coaching businesses in that space. And so I've thought a lot about what it looks like and what it means to kind of how we show up in that space in terms of our physical fitness or just physical well-being, how we move our bodies consistently, and the kind of direct correlations between that and the business world. And I've hosted a podcast called Endurance Minded for this is our 6th year. And that's what we talk about. It's very much those kind of commonalities between, how we show up for ourselves is how we show up for other people. It's how we show up in our businesses. For me personally, I think some sort of consistent movement practice is an important part of that. And yeah, I see so many through lines. It's certainly, I'll speak for myself in my own life, is like the discipline, required for me to exercise consistently on a daily basis is the same. I can apply that discipline to business, right? It's I'm not going to negotiate with myself, right? If I want to accomplish an objective and I want to build something, the deal's been made, right? And it's kind of the same way I think about my physical fitness is the alarm goes off, the deal's been made, right? I'm not going to negotiate. It's something that I've said is important. It's something I've said that I value. And so I feel like for me, that language gets used and kind of recycled in whatever space I'm in, in business and relationships and, my relationship with myself and physical fitness. And so, yeah, I think endurance is a big part of it. And I think specifically kind of the skills that we hone when we are in a season of endurance is something that can really be leveraged and utilized in all areas of our lives, right? Building a business, starting a new relationship, right? I think there's often these periods where like endurance is probably a good word, right? It requires us to continue to show up and to foster that thing with great care and to continue to pour into it. And, so that could be, again, that's physical fitness. That's this, wherever it's at. And I've always really connected with that mindset. That always made a lot of sense to me. And it's something that I've talked about in a coaching capacity in the leadership space. And that connection seems to make sense to lots of other people as well, which has been kind of something I've been able to kind of maybe a slightly unique slant for how I kind of think about leadership development and team development in businesses and things like that.
Sifu, I have a question for you, because for those of you who've watched us before, or even just noticing us this morning, Sifu and I have very different personalities. So
slightly.
So for me, I say it, connection starts the moment I walk in the room. Actually, even before I walk in the room, I'm energetically connecting to people before I even walk in a room. So not that you're not, but you do it in a different way.
Mm.
I see you as a stealthy connector. Um, I see you as an observer and how you take in things, and I think it's very respectable and commendable. So tell me from your eye view how you see yourself and how you show up, how you describe that to people.
Oh, thank you for those compliments, by the way.
Mhm.
I first want to say good morning to Marianne for joining us today. Thank you for being here with us. And anybody else who's watching, you can make some comments, and then we'd love to share them with our audience. So, how I see myself, and yes, you're right. I'm very much a people observer. I watch, I look, and I see, and I too, I love people, but I love to see how they are, how they treat other people. That's my biggest takeaway.
Mm.
This is how I know how to approach somebody, how they are. I'm a hugger, so I like hugging. So I am extremely friendly. But if I see somebody who's very rude or not nice, maybe I don't want to be near their energy. So do I want to be near them? No, I will draw myself to the people that I see that have positivity, because that's how I want my life to be. And am I going to go in somebody who's very negative and try to change them? I can't change them. That's a lot of therapy, and I don't have that much time for them. So for me,
Oh, I love
it's
it.
always about, like, if I saw you guys in any room, I would definitely come and approach you, because you're very outgoing. You're very nice in the way, even just the commonality, the way you present yourself. So for me, when I walk into a room, I have people who scream across the room. They're like, Sifu! And I'm like, oh man, I'm so happy to see them. And so people see me as this presence of a person who I hold myself to high standards, because not to try to put myself on a pedestal, because everyone around me is on pedestals. I look up to everyone, but I hold myself to high standards because I have to live with me. That's the person I'm trying to impress. I'm not trying to impress anyone else out there. When I'm alone in my room and I look in the mirror, is that guy happy? So that's how I come across. And I try to be as friendly as I possibly can, but also it's the language I use, right? So I am, like I said, I'm a hugger. I'm very open and friendly, but I also have to, I do read the room first.
Yeah. I've found myself shifting to a bit more of that. I've always been, I'm still really outgoing. I've always been like fairly gregarious, but I think kind of in the same way that it sounds like you do, Sifu, is I definitely am more, I read the room more. I'm more of a listener first now. I think certainly when I was, and maybe this is just a product of age and experience, I don't know, but when I was younger, I came in and I was the first person to talk, and not that I was trying to override people. I mean, I've always been very interested in connection, but I've found, and even the people that are really close to me, my business partner and other folks I, engage with a lot, they're like, oh, you're really quiet for the first kind of part, whether it's just a conversation or a meeting or we're networking or, and I found that I really, really enjoy listening. And I think it's partly because I've really worked to become a much better listener. I don't know. I would have liked to have fancied myself a really good listener, maybe, 10, 15, 20 years ago or whatever. But realistically, I don't know that I was nailing that. And, I was the person who was like listening, but trying to think about my response while they're, and now I'm very, very committed to being a good listener and being, and bringing that person in if there's a connection there. And yeah, I think that it's just an interesting, hearing you talk about kind of your approach, Sifu, made me think about, my own, and I think there's some alignment there for sure. Where I think I'm a bit more, listen first, a little bit maybe less words. Now, when I get fired up, I can go all day, and I would describe myself as passionate, and when I'm working with teams and in my work and leading people through whatever we're doing, I mean, that's, I certainly am known for, I can grandstand with the best of them, but it's an interesting evolution. Maybe it's something that made me think about my own kind of journey as it relates to like connection and building trust with people and relationships. And I like that listening first, and maybe even slightly turned off by people that kind of behave like I used to, right? Where they kick the door in and they're the loud. I'm like, I don't know about this person. I'm gonna wait and see. I'm a little bit reticent. We'll see. So, it's interesting how we evolve.
I used to have a friend of mine that I used to work with when I did interior design architecture, and if there was anything happening, it was humdrum and everything. But the minute Israel walked into the room lit up. He was just energy, and he had this beautiful energy about him, and he wasn't overbearing. He wasn't the kind of guy that you go, oh man, he's here, I want to leave. He was the kind of guy that lit up the room, and you just felt love. You really did. And it was really so powerful when he walked into a room, and he's like, he would even make fun of it. He's like, guys, what are you doing? It's so quiet in here. Let's wake up. Let's move. And I can see that there's different ways of people entering a room, and Andrea owns the room, but I don't think she comes in and being like, look at me. She's more like, look, let's party together. And I think that's what Israel, my friend, was like. He was embodying everybody's spirit and bringing them all together for them all to enjoy one another. And I think that's the difference between somebody who's overbearing and somebody who is caring.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because I don't walk in with an intention of taking over a room. That is not my intention whatsoever. And people, it's not that I'm shy. There's a song that goes, I'm shy, unbelievably shy. Well, obviously, they're obviously not shy if they're belting a song, which I didn't belt very good this morning. But, obviously I'm not shy. But in a way, I do have my reservations or stuff, but I was an only child, and in order to be seen or heard in a noisy household, which is funny, there was only 3 of us, and it was a very noisy household because I had to compete with the TV and my dad's yelling, and he wasn't yelling all the time, but when he yelled, it was a lot. It was loud and a lot. And then with the TV, and so I often felt like I didn't have a chance to be seen or heard. So early in my life, I wanted to be seen and heard. So I did kind of get out there and really put myself out there. And that's because I wanted to be seen and heard. Where nowadays I just naturally show up in a room, and it's because I want to be there and I want to talk to people and I want to embrace people. And I do have people who have admitted to me that they feel intimidated around me, which is the last thing that I would ever want anybody to feel. And I'm so inclusive and accepting of people. So it breaks my heart to hear that. And I think, how can I be less intimidating? But I really don't. Maybe you guys can help me with this here. Like when I walk in a room, I'm walking in smiling and I look at everybody and I stand really confidently, and I don't know how to not be that. And I don't know if that's it or if there's something else I'm doing that seems intimidating.
One of the things that when I go to events, I'm the first one that usually puts my hand out or say hello, and like you said, smile, even though I am reserved. But I am usually, like, people are looking around, they're like, and I'll just go right up to them. I'll go, how are you? Are you enjoying the show? So all of a sudden they're like, oh, he may look stuffy, but he's not. So I'm always okay to break the ice. And a lot of times when people look at you, because maybe they're like, well, I don't know if I want to talk to them, they look intimidating. So if I always break the ice, and sometimes people will not talk to a person because they're like, oh my God, they're on this huge pedestal. I don't even know if I can reach them. And I'm like, there's no pedestals here. I go over and I say, hello, how are you? And a lot of people will say to me, how on earth did you get to talk to that person? I said, what could they say to me? I teach people how to kill for a living. What could they say to me that's going to hurt me? Nothing. So I'm not intimidated by anyone. So for me, it's easy to go and talk to someone, because a lot of people will see me and they're like, oh man, he's this master. I'm not. I'm right now. I'm right in front of you. I'm just hanging out with you. We're identical in the space that we're in. I'm not higher than you. You're not, to me, you're not higher than me. We're equals. And that's how I always approach any situation. And I think that in business, the power of business is about that, making someone feel like they can talk to you. Because if they feel that they need to refrain, you'll never get to know what their real concerns are, or what their real worries are, or how you can even help them, because they're intimidated by what you're going to be saying.
How does that show up for you, Taylor?
I mean, I think it boils down to connection. I mean, you know, we tend to kind of, you know, fabricate these striations in the business world, right? This person's accomplished X, and then maybe I'm just starting out, or right? Like to both of your points about specifically if it's in the space of like a networking or, you know, building relationships, we immediately apply these, like, this person's done X and I'm lesser than them, or maybe it's the, you know, in some cases, I'm not speaking about myself personally, but you know, I've done X, and so I'm further along, or this, I don't, you know, I shouldn't be talking to this person. And I just think at the end of the day, and this kind of ties back to like the power of business to really facilitate an impact in people's lives, is I think it really just is an opportunity for connection. At the end of the day, we're all trying to do things that we really care about, right? If you are in business, if even in a career space, but you're in that and you're invested, and you're not just a cog in the wheel, or you don't want to be just a cog, you got skin in the game, right? You're emotionally invested in this thing. And certainly on the owner operator side, the executive side, you know, if you're closer to the kind of pointy end of the spear, you're all you really want to do is move this thing further along, and you want it probably to be a really positive experience for the people involved in that business. And so if we come at it from a place of connection, that's all we're really trying to do, is like, hey, this is something I really care about. I know you probably really care about your thing. What does that look like, right? Can we trade ideas? What's been your experience? And I think at that level, it doesn't matter if you're, you know, $100 million business or $100,000 business. Fundamentally, you're still invested in the same way. The things that you're trying to solve for may be different. And there might, you know, there's more or less water under your bridge, so to speak. But I do believe, and I've seen it play out, you know, literally daily in my life, is like, I just believe in kind of pouring out or working to make a connection, and knowing that just fostering those will ultimately take me where I want to go, right? It doesn't do any good, in my experience, to be insular, to stay siloed, right? I don't have all the answers. I'm not interested in being the smartest person in the room. I'm interested in empowering those around me to be smarter than I am and have better ideas than that, right? I always see, like, if I walk into the room and I have the best ideas and I'm the smartest, I'm in the wrong room, right? I got to find some other room to be in.
Yeah.
I don't need to be that person. I want to learn. I want to grow. I want to connect. And then in the work that I do, I mean, I want to be a facilitator to help people see how they can do that for themselves, you know, in their own organizations. And I think when we come down, where it kind of distills to what are our real core objectives? What are we trying to do? I think it's just like, it's connect and do something that we're really passionate about, right? We're in it. Specifically, I mean, certainly on the entrepreneurial side, you know, it takes so much that it should be something that we're excited about, right? We're so invested that I think ultimately I just, I just want people to talk to, well, I mean, I'm sure you guys, like what's happened to all of us, I'm sure, right? You go to like a networking event with other business owners, entrepreneurs, whatever, and people are hungry. They're like, oh man, like tell me, I mean, how'd you work through this? I had this big win. People want to share their wins. They don't, it's not always just like, hey, the bottom got kicked out from under me. How'd you solve this? I think, people just want to be a part of a community that is exciting. It's a unique experience to be invested in your career path, again, no matter where you're at in that space or how you're engaged in it. And so, yeah, I just focus on that, I think. And to your point, Sifu, I think then that gets rid of those pedestals, right? You see the person who's exited a company and X, Y, and Z, right? Whatever those parameters are that we think might be on a pedestal, and inevitably go up and talk to that person, and they're just excited to share, their wins, right? They're not talking about that big exit. They're talking about, the meeting they had with a great employee yesterday that got them really fired up, and that employee's excited about their mission and vision for the company, this new thing they're building. And right, it always like comes back down to the same thing, I think, these kind of core fundamental pieces. So, yeah, I think I agree with what both of you are saying. I think there's so much power in just approaching it from a place of like connection and community. And I think that's what people want, at the end of the day, right? Just I think feel included.
I had a thought. Go ahead.
No, you go. You have a thought.
Let's fight over it. All right, I'll go first. So we all have worked with athletes and really high level celebrities, people that we may not even be able to say that we work with. Like for me, I had a lot of do not disclose people in my life, that I worked for, because they wanted to keep under wraps some of the things that I did and worked for them with. And, part of that is we have to show up differently. So that's another different power that we have to have in business. So Sifu, I'd like to hear you and Taylor both address that about, how you think about what are some things that you're doing that allow you to work with such high caliber people, and how other people can learn from what you guys are doing to be able to achieve that.
Wow, you just brought me into a perfect position, because I'm going to share something with you guys. I think communication is probably the easiest way. If you can hone in on your communication, you can talk to anyone. Guys, take a look at this.
Welcome to Speaking Prowess, where we believe in the power of communication to transform lives. If you're ready to take your communication skills to the next level, then mark your calendars for April 5th, because we've got something special for you. We have a lineup of some of the most influential communication experts in the industry. These are the voices that will guide you on a journey to enhance your ability to connect, influence, and succeed. At Speaking Prowess, our mission is clear: to empower you through effective communication. We know that mastering the art of communication isn't just about what you say. It's about how you say it and the impact it has on every aspect of your life. So take action now. Join us on April 5th and unlock your full speaking potential. Reserve your spot today and get ready to embark on a journey towards personal and professional growth. See you at the masterclass on April 5th.
So there you go. Communication.
Oh,
That's everything that definitely. Thank you for bringing that through. So for me, when we want to engage with anyone, it's how we do it, right? At a networking event, it's the embrace, right? And even if somebody doesn't like to hug, it's maybe the handshake, the way you communicate with your heart, the words you use. So when I was younger, because I didn't know any better, I would use foul language. And I think it's been, if somebody sees me curse even today or even 30 years ago, they were like, who are you? Because I realized that the language I use I should be able to use it with every single person. So if I'm with my friends and I'm cursing, and then I go and I sit with a bunch of business people where I should not be cursing, and one comes out, I'm like, oops, I don't think that really sets me up any different. But when I communicate the same way with everyone, of course, if I'm talking to a child, it's going to be different than if I'm talking to an adult, right? If I'm talking to a family member, it's all on everything. The way we communicate with our heart, the words we use, I think makes a huge difference. So when we do meet a new person, or when we are talking to someone about business, maybe we're hiring somebody, and if we don't communicate exactly what we want for them to do as their job, as their project that we're going to have them on, then we're going to be lost. And so for me, the way I come across at any given time is the same way I talk to everybody. So I asked somebody recently, how would you talk if you were talking to God in person? Not because you died, but if you actually were there with God. And what if he came in front of you and he just said, let's have a conversation? How would you communicate?
So I immediately want to respond like, I got to tell you some tea. No. Actually, I don't talk like that. I just recently we've been friends of mine have been joking about how kids now talk tea, and and it used to be spill the tea, and like how things change. Taylor, what would you say, whether it was God or a celebrity?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think about authenticity, I think, and that's kind of I hear that come up a lot lately, and there's this kind of debate over, should you be, who you are authentically in every single space, or does that look different? Right? So I think you hear people say, or I've heard them like, "Oh, that's just who I authentically am." And like to your point, so you feel like they come in and communicate in a way that isn't in alignment with the space and the people, and so it's not from a place of connection. It's from a place of, I think, a bit of skewed authenticity. Right? They're saying, "Well, this is who I am." I think there's an opportunity to just think about that in a more nuanced way. I'm not advocating that you shouldn't be authentic, but I am certainly an advocate of having really, really well-developed communication styles and strategies for the people that you're talking to, right? Like, we'll use this for an example. I'm going to be authentic to who I am and what I believe, but the way that I communicate that will sound differently in this environment than it would if I'm talking to my 80-year-old grandmother, or if I'm talking to my spouse, or if I'm right. So there's an agility there. It doesn't mean that we're changing our messaging, and it doesn't mean that we are less authentically ourselves. But I think that there is an opportunity to really hone. And I'm a massive believer in always honing your communication skills. That is the biggest skill that we have. If you can't communicate, you could be the best, smartest, brightest, have the best idea in the world. If you can't communicate that, and you can't, back to our previous conversation, if you can't connect with people such that you're able to build that bridge for them, help them see who you are, what you're about, what you're doing, right? Pick a lane. I mean, from relationship to business to everything else, right? It's about communication. And so I think there is a real opportunity for just some nuance there. That yes, absolutely, be authentically yourself. But also work to hone your communication skills and to communicate that authenticity in a way that connects and feels safe for people, right? I'll be honest. I can cuss like a sailor, right? I have a potty mouth. That doesn't mean that I have to use that in every scenario. If that doesn't make people feel safe, if they're not comfortable, That's fine with me, right? It depends on who I'm talking to. If I'm working out with a friend of mine and we're in the gym, that's going to sound different than when I'm in a boardroom, and it's still who I am, and it's what I believe, and I'm still working to build connection. But yeah, I think it can be different. And again, that's where I like to leverage communication, right? How am I still being myself, but leveraging a skill set? And I think that's what communication is. So, yeah, to your question, Andrea, I think that there's so much opportunity for us to grow in that space. I think honestly, that's probably what holds a lot of people back. And just to go back to several minutes ago, you were saying that people feel intimidated by you. That's probably a communication. They're not confident in their own communication abilities to come up to someone who is confident in those abilities and build that connection. So they feel like that's potentially a deficit. I don't want to make too broad of a stroke, but just in my experience, that's a communication deficit. They're not confident or secure in how to show up as themselves, but communicate that clearly and confidently to someone like yourself, who is very obviously communicating your authentic self confidently and clearly. And right. And that's great. So I think that's where we come into those friction points where it's this person's on a pedestal and this person's not. And I think a lot of times that's just bridged with good communication skills and a confidence and an authenticity on both sides, so you can build a bridge and just connect. So
thank you for that.
Perfect.
And since I'm recognizing what time it is, I'll just recap with a sentence that I have found working with celebrities and major athletes and so forth easy, because I talk to them as if they're human beings, and I don't I respect what they do, but I don't usually respond in a fangirl reaction. And because I act that way, then they treat me like a peer. And they know that I respect and appreciate their work. And so it just puts me at a peer level.
That's
So
beautiful.
Yeah. Back to that connection piece. That's all it boils down to, is just build, people just want to connect. And so you do that the same with superstars as you do with, people on the street. So I think that's
I just want to share, I put up there, if you look at it, it's zcal.co/C for Raphael, /business. That's if you want to come on the show and be a guest here, just like Taylor has been. And you've been an exceptional guest, my friend. So thank you. One of the things that we're about to come off and finish the show, is that when you consider what we're trying to do here with this show, is we're trying to impact as many people as we can to consider business as one of the major things in our lives that really impact the world. They impact, like I said earlier, your community, your life, your personal life, your family life. But if we can think in a bigger spectrum of everything that we're doing, it can definitely impact the world. How are we showing up at our business, right? That's why Dr. Andrea and I are doing the show, to help you guys show up properly when you consider business. So thank you, Taylor, so much for being here with us. Dr. Andrea, what would you like to say before we take off?
Oh, I got more words. I figured I'd already had enough words. All right. So everybody this week, go out and see how you can make some new connections in the world. Relationship capital is one of the greatest assets that we can have. So create some new neural pathways, be out and be social, love on people, and # keep smiling.
Yeah, love it. All right, everybody, have an exceptional rest of your Friday. Take care.